Hello, everyone. This is Nat, your host. Welcome to another episode of Couch Sessions. Thank you guys for joining us again today. I have another beautiful and special guest today. Her name is Karla Reeves, and I'm excited to dive into great conversation with her about what she does, her business, and a bit of her story. Let me just go ahead and give you guys some background on Karla. She is the visionary founder of Magical Moments Holistic Wellness LLC, which is a luxury wellness brand dedicated to helping individuals and communities heal, grow, and thrive. She has over a decade of professional experience in finance and business, and she is a lifelong has a lifelong passion for spiritual wellness. She blends grounded leadership with deep energetic insight. Her work spans around sound healing, quantum energy sessions, intuitive development, holistic luxury sessions, and empowerment coaching, all designed to support the full spectrum of healing, the mind, body, and the spirit. Karla is especially passionate about bringing holistic care to those who need it the most, offering supportive services in nursing homes, hospitals, schools, and to individuals undergoing chemotherapy or navigating chronic stress, grief, or trauma. Karla believes that peace, presence, and healing should be accessible in every stage and setting of life, and she is known for her compassionate presence and bold vision. Karla empowers others to rise from burnout, disconnection, and pain and return home to themselves restored, realigned, and radiant. She leads with intention, integrity, and a commitment to helping every client feel deeply seen, supported, and sovereign in their journey. Karla, thank you so much for coming on the show and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so
Yes,
excited
yes.
to be here.
I'm excited for you too to be here. And I will just say, I feel like spirit, universe, source has a way of aligning people very good. And I think I had told you, I don't even exactly remember how I found you, but I always tell everybody I just consult spirit about who needs to come on the show. And I let spirit lead in that to the person, the timeline. I just let everything fall in place. And I just felt like that instantaneously with you. And I told you one day I was just getting myself ready to go to work and I had been asking, and it was clear you were the next person.
Oh, I love that. I definitely have spirit like first and foremost in my life in every decision that I make. So that totally aligns with
Yes, yes, it is wonderful and exciting to just live in that space because it's just spirit never does you wrong. Spirit leads you where you need to go when we are listening. So, Karla, I want to hop in. I want to find out a little bit about yourself and a little bit of your journey and how you got into this world of holistic wholeness.
me. Absolutely. So we're about to go deep. So I'm gonna give trigger warnings. There's gonna be talk of sexual abuse, domestic violence, self-harm, anything you can think of. So trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning.
Absolutely.
I got into this because I was really healing from a lot of my own pain.
Mm,
It started with sexual abuse at a young age,
mm,
very young, and then moved to a lot of domestic violence, both for me and family members, and really trying to heal from that.
mhm,
Of course, trying to make my way through some self harm ideations, things like that. I felt at the time that God had abandoned me. I went from believing in God to being a full, like, devout atheist.
mhm,
And the weird part about that is I don't even think my family knew that.
mm,
Because at that point, I was just like, well, if God was real and if he loved me, why would he make me go through so much at such a young age? And I mean, I've gone through all of this um, from I can remember until maybe 25, 26.
mm. Okay.
So it was a long, painful journey, a long, painful upbringing. And I just really felt like if God was real, then why? Why?
Mm-hmm.
So I really sat with it. I actually started sitting with myself. I've, in therapy, talking to a therapist, healing from all the things. And then once that was done and kind of digging deeper into the root of the pain. So obviously, yes, a lot of it had to do with things that happened to me, but also a lot of it was emotional feelings of abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I kind of bounced around from I was really young, between my great grandmother to my
Mm-hmm.
grandmother to my aunt. I did not spend a lot of time living with my mom. So I felt very abandoned and unwanted. So it was just a lot of deep emotional pain and trying to
Right.
navigate through that and then becoming a mother and not wanting to pass that on to my child.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, how do I get out of this? How do I make sure that my child does not have the same upbringing that I did?
Mm-hmm.
And again, therapy, huge help, huge advocate for therapy.
Yes,
But
indeed.
it felt like it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
What was I missing? And then I kind of reverted back to God, to believing in God, to going to church. But I also knew that there was just more out there and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't really explain it. Besides the fact that ever since I could remember, I could see spirits.
Mm-hmm.
I could, um, but it was so hush hush at the time. It's not as wildly spoken about as it is now. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people did not come forward because it is looked at, in the church as like something demonic or evil.
Yes.
So it was very hush hush, very quiet. A few people knew. I don't even know if my family knew. I knew they had gifts, but I don't even think I fully came out and was like, oh, hey, I see people walking around the house all the time.
I gotcha.
So, it's just very like, we keep it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to a spiritual fair. And I was at a point in my life where I felt like I was just going in circles. Like I'd wake up, I'd go to work, I'd, take care of my son. I was in a relationship that did not feel fulfilling, but I felt like I had to stay because, again, I did not want to create the same cycles that I went through. So I
Yes.
did not want my son to grow up in a broken home, just internalizing all of that. Um, and I was just very depressed. Went to this spiritual fair. Don't know how I was led there, but I was led. It was very spirit led. And this lady started doing Reiki on me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt all of the energy. I felt this weight just being lifted off of my body. I felt everything. And I knew then that I wanted to do Reiki. So
Mm-hmm.
I started becoming, a Reiki master. I learned Reiki. And from there, it just like everything opened up.
Mm-hmm.
And I started healing myself first through Reiki, through energetic balancing, through, all the modalities and learning the modalities. And my gifts got stronger. So I started seeing more, hearing more, having visions. And through that process, I just realized that this was my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I left that relationship, which was very hard because it wasn't a bad relationship. And I think people don't realize how hard it is to leave a relationship where you don't feel fulfilled when there's nothing inherently wrong with the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't abusive, wasn't cheating, there wasn't anything like that. He absolutely loved me, but I just knew it just wasn't right.
Yeah.
It wasn't right for me, it wasn't right for my purpose. And again, I did not want to break up a happy home, so I kind of delayed it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then eventually, that's 2020 when COVID hit, everything changed. I left that relationship. I ended up thinking about moving out of state. like I said, my gifts opened up more. I went deeper on my spiritual path, and I really started magical moments in its like infancy. It wasn't even magical moments then. I don't even remember what I was calling it. I think it was like divine right. Um, but I was really trying to help people heal through, like, can't really call it therapy because I'm not a therapist, but like talk therapy, things like that. Um,
Right.
just really connecting with them, because it's easy to, talk to someone but have them feel like they don't exactly know what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Therapists are great. Again,
Mm-hmm.
advocate for them. I go to therapy all the time, but there's not, it doesn't always feel like there's a connection, and it really shouldn't feel like a
Mm-hmm.
connection because, that's their job. They're a therapist. But when you have someone that understands what you're going through, that's been there, have been in your shoes to some extent, it really, I feel like it makes a difference.
It
It's like,
does.
okay, they're not just pulling out of a book on how to help me. They've been
Mm-hmm.
and they've pulled themselves out. And, I feel like that makes a difference. So I kind of wanted to be that, especially for children.
Mm-hmm.
It's like near and dear to my heart, because if I had someone like me at a very young age, I would have taken a much different path, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would not be here. I would not be the me to help other people. So I get it. We all have our path to
Mm-hmm.
walk and to take. Um, so I really dug deep on how, like, what do I need to learn to like be this person that I wanted to be. And then I started learning other modalities. Um, Ended up in South Carolina, really wanted to do more hands-on work with people, not just individuals, but nursing homes, schools, things like that, and just bring that holistic feel to it. So that's currently what I'm working on now, and it's been it's been a journey. It's been great. It's been
Mm-hmm.
hard. There's been a lot of joy and sadness and tears, both happy and angry and confusion. But at the end of it, I really feel like I have found my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
By day, I am an accountant. And for the longest time, I wondered, why did I get into the finance? Besides the fact that numbers come easy to me. And digging deep, I realized it was a stability issue. Accountants make money,
They do.
and I wanted to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up poor. So it's like, how can I make sure that, again, my son does not live the life that I did, growing up in the projects in New York. And I'm not saying that my childhood was terrible. My mother did the absolute best that she could with what she.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But of course, as a child and growing up, you don't realize that the adult is just a person and they're doing their absolute best. All you're focused on is what you don't have. So as a child, it's like, oh, I don't have the latest, Jordans or whatever, things I don't even care about now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't have the things that my peers have. Um, I don't have name brand cereals on top of the fridge. It's the one that come in the bag.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, you focus on that and you take that with you into adulthood instead of
Mm-hmm.
realizing that, my mother was a person. She was dealing with whatever she was dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
but she did the absolute best she can. She kept us clothed, she kept us fed, she kept us clean.
Mm-hmm.
My hair barrettes always match my glasses. Like she did the absolute best she can. She was, a really great mom.
Mm-hmm.
But I do carry mother wounds from that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that I am, helping other people fix, is like identifying those wounds and where they come from. Um, Sorry, I'm skipping around. But
No,
anyway,
no, no. You're right on target. You're right on target. I want you to put a pin if you can where you are for just a second. And I want to go back because you took us right in. I didn't have to do it. And I knew that's why Spirit told me don't have an agenda.
okay.
Don't have it because I could get real agenda happy. And Spirit was like, no. So I applaud you for just going right in and thank you for issuing the trigger warning. Um, so I want to say something because I find this as a commonplace for many healers. We go through very traumatic things or have been through very traumatic things. And it gets to a point where, yes, we go to therapy, and I am a huge advocate of going to therapy. I love my therapist. I love my therapist. She is amazing. Um, but we get to a place where we realize that's not enough.
Exactly.
There is some real physical, tangible, spiritual things that need to take place. Somatics, sound healing. You talked about your experience with Reiki. Um, I learned about it through my acupuncturist, and that was a modality that I was unfamiliar with, acupuncture. And that came to me at a very intense time in my life where I was very sick and had to learn how to walk again. And
Oh,
she
wow.
introduced me to Reiki. Okay. And I was very curious. Even as a child, things were just illuminated to me, like that were different. I was a very different child. Um, but we'll get off of that for a second. But I was curious enough, and then I later had a partner who attuned me to it. And when it happened, it was like you said, you could just feel this lightness coming over your body because things were moving that have been dormant
Yep.
for a while, that just been sitting because your body remembers. Okay, it remembers everything.
Absolutely.
And when you introduce somebody to Reiki, it it's a form of therapy that comes beyond just talking. Because there's only so much talking you can do,
Mm,
right?
yep.
There's only so much talking to do. And I love that you mentioned it because it was like, God, I feel like I'm listening to myself. I
Yeah.
do. There were parts of your story I'm like, yep, I can relate to this. I can relate to that. And hearing that you're like, okay, the therapy is working, but I need something more because I don't want to keep cycling this behavior. I'm talking about it and I recognize it, right? And I'm trying to train myself to like pause before I react,
Yep.
but I need to do some deeper inner work that's going to take me out of the element of just talking about it. And you mentioned church, and a lot of the somatic practices or Reiki, sound baths, all this stuff, this is not something we learned in the church.
No.
It was not something you learned in the church. It was pray it away. It was memorize scripture. Now, depending on what kind of background you were in the church, sometimes they had deliverance ministries where they laid hands and tried to cast something out of you to that extreme. Um, but being open to it and like, I don't know about you, but it made you feel like you're not crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It,
Like,
I knew it.
yeah,
It made you feel like, oh my, like I knew it. I'm not nuts.
right. Hmm. Yeah. And it is something that, and I'm on the journey with you too. Just settling in the fact that knowing that God loves me and the heart of God towards me hasn't changed, even though people would tell me it would. Okay. It's so important to have that to have that journey and have that connection like that. And I love how you said, I went back to church, but I knew there were things that were not going to be there.
Yeah.
I love that. I want you to talk just a little bit about that because I was like, I got to land over there and I want her to speak into that part.
Absolutely. So I went back to church. I did feel a sense of community,
Hmm.
but I also felt like it just wasn't enough. It
Hmm.
felt very, I don't even want to say judgmental, but it did. It felt very judgmental. And I know
Hmm.
church isn't like the people, but in a way it is because that
Right.
is your community. That is who you go and you worship and pray with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, if I can't be open and be my authentic self here,
Mm-hmm.
then this is not my community.
Exactly.
If I can't say, I'm doing Reiki, or, you know, Grandpa Joe is sitting over in the corner and you look at me like I have 10 heads and like I'm demonic, then this is not my community.
Right.
And I
Right.
just did not want to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized then that my closeness with God had nothing to do with going to church.
That part. That's
Absolutely nothing
that
to,
part right there. Because that's just a building.
exactly.
The connection to if we could just get real, the connection and the relationship is in you.
Exactly. And learning that you are one with God
Yep.
and building that relationship with God has nothing to do with the building. It has nothing to do with the people. It really has nothing to do with the Bible,
Mm-mm.
because everybody interprets the Bible in their own way. We could read
Mm-hmm.
the same exact scripture and have a few different interpretations of it.
Exactly.
So it's all about, what is your interpretation of what this scripture is saying,
Mm-hmm.
and just having that close relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
So I no longer attend church.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I don't believe in God. I absolutely believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring God into everything that I do. I bring God into my Reiki. I make sure I pray before I do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just set a sense of protection around me and my client. And, you know, God is everywhere with me.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that I need to be in church believing all the things that everyone else believes. And I think that's
Exactly.
the hardest part for most people.
And it is, especially if you were reared and raised in it. It's kind of like when you learn how to walk.
Yeah.
Um, and if that's what you've been hearing and it gets reinforced and reinforced and reinforced, there's this major movement that's been happening. And I think a lot of it really started when the pandemic happened. People started to learn they didn't need to go to that building
Yeah.
during the pandemic. I mean, I'm sure it was happening before, but I remember quite clearly people started to leave the church and begin to to go on their deconstruction journey, and they began to learn about God and God showing up in ways that were contrary to what they had heard in that building, right? And it's just really really important to come into that space of knowing, like you said, you are one with God. Um, you know, you've heard me say this on other podcasts. You're on this planet for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay, your life has a purpose. People need to know that you're here. There's community that can happen, like even with you, what you and I are doing right now, right? We're developing something, a community. You're sharing your story, but we are finding there's a lot of similarities, right? And
Yeah.
connection that happens. That didn't happen in a church.
Nope.
It didn't. It was just literally lead me to who needs to come on this show, and I'm gonna wait for you to tell me who it is, even if it takes a month.
Exactly. Divine timing. It's always about divine timing and
Yeah,
finding that community. They will find you, or
yeah.
you will find them. You just have to be patient, and you have to
Mhm,
make sure that you're using your discernment and listening to God. God will show
mhm,
you the way.
mhm. Yes, and I love that you talked about. You said you became like a full-blown atheist, and you mentioned that your family didn't know it. Was there something in your journey when you found yourself going back to church? Did you have an encounter? Was it just something, just little things that kept leading you to go back? I was curious about that.
I honestly can't even tell you what led me back to church. The only thing I can say is it was God,
Okay.
because I, again, full blown did not believe in God, was
Hmm.
not going to church. Didn't speak to my family about it. I just kept it inside. And then one day I just went back to church. It wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even like an action that happened that said, let me go back. No, my grandma went and I went with her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can't even tell you what it was other than spirit. It
Got
had to
you.
have been.
I got you. And this time you said in this time you don't attend church. What is what does church look like for you right now?
For me, it's waking up every morning, being grateful and thanking God for another
Mm-hmm.
day, meditating, saying my prayers, and that's pretty much it. You know, reading my Bible. I do self Bible study
Mm-hmm.
and interpreting it the way that I feel is
Mm-hmm.
right for me, and just having that close connection with God. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to a building. It's not, I don't mind like if someone wanted to do Bible study, we could do it together, but I don't feel like I need to go to church, especially here in South Carolina, because
Mm-hmm.
because they are very, very much judgmental. And once they learn that I'm a medium and I read tarot cards and do all the things,
Yeah.
then it's going to be, them trying to quote unquote save me. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that.
No, and I will agree with you. And I'll just tell just a teeny tiny piece of how I can relate to you in that on a personal level. I didn't go to church until I came to South Carolina. I came to South Carolina 2006. I didn't start going to the church until 2008. Had the whole experience. It's real. It does happen. People change and transform.
Yeah.
Um, you know, have the gift of the Holy Spirit, can still speak in tongues to this day. Okay. It's real. It
Yeah.
does happen. Um, However, I will say that I realized in being in ministry, being in leadership, pastoring and different things, there was, okay, you have these gifts, but they're confined to this box. And this box has to look a certain way. And if it looks anything outside of that, that's where the judgment comes in. And a lot of the religious trauma and the spiritual abuse um, that I'm still, even to this day, working through, um, it happened here in this state.
Wow.
It happened here. Um, and, you know, my ex and I moved around. We did a few different things, the whole, we're following God. God is telling us to go here and we're going to go here and we're going to build community within this church. And then we're going to help them do whatever they're supposed to do, however God's leading them here. And then when it's time for us to go, we're going to go over here. Um, there was so much judgment even outside of South Carolina that I seen within those walls. There are good people in those walls. I will say that. Okay.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
met some beautiful, beautiful people that I miss dearly. Um, because they were just good people and they were living it.
Mm.
Okay. They were living it and you've seen it. You've seen evidence of it. Um, but when you start talking about tarot cards and different things, energy work, there is this anxiety that creeps up in people
Yeah.
because they've been hearing something from the pulpit or they've been hearing an interpretation of a scripture from the pulpit to make it seem what it's not. And it's really, really, really sad because that conditioning, that I'll go back to it being reinforced. I'm gonna use a word, and I'm sure you heard it, stronghold.
Yeah.
Okay. When something gets reinforced, a teaching gets reinforced, it becomes a stronghold.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And if that's the only way you see, you're not going to be open to if something wants to come along as another form of healing. I had people telling me acupuncture was of the devil. You're going to open yourself up to all kinds of demonic things.
Oh
I
my God.
opened myself up to walking again.
I cannot believe that.
I opened myself up to walking again because this is an Eastern modality
Mm.
that got the chi, the blood, the inflammation. It got things in my body to move so that I could walk again. My acupuncturist saved my life.
which is amazing.
Hmm. Right? So the judgment, all that stuff, it closes you off. And if those voices are so amplified in your head, there are things that you have the potential to miss.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Um, but I want to kind of pivot a little bit because we could stay on this for a minute. I think
Yes.
we could stay on this for a minute. So,
Forever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there are more people coming out and sharing their stories now. Like, okay, I still believe. I still believe. I've seen way too many things to make me not believe. You said that, and I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you were talking about the people in the church and how it's not really about the people, but it is, because if that's your community and that is the family of God, because I took it very literally, the family of God,
Mm-hmm.
if the people are behaving a certain way that's passing off judgment and they are housing it in language where they're telling you it's love, but it's disguised as judgment or hate, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. If I'm sick and I get labeled as something demonic or that I'm carrying something that can be transferred to somebody else, that's not good.
No.
That's not good. Or somebody who feels like, well, if you come to me and I'll pray with you and your healing's going to come. Well, where is that coming from?
Exactly.
I've never, when I look at the character and the nature of Jesus, the ones who he gave a riot act to were the religious ones,
Mm-hmm.
the ones who thought they knew everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Exactly. Because they're so close-minded.
mhm,
They're extremely close-minded that even when, if you read the Bible, even when Jesus came, there were a bunch of people who did not believe because they thought that it would look one way. And because it did
mhm,
not look the way that they thought it would look, they did not follow Jesus.
right. And so I remember in scripture it said, "Here I am standing before you." And they didn't recognize him.
Nope.
They can't see because they were so closed-minded and so closed off, and then gave him hell because he was entertaining the the marginalized, the oppressed, the outcasts. We see some of that same nonsense happening today.
Yep.
Okay, let me get off of this so I can get the rest of your story. Okay, so you started in your holistic practices, you developed um, magical moments. Tell me how you began to expand into that.
So I started with, I've always been into herbs.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like fully trained as an herbalist at that point, but excuse me. And I realized later that it was a gift because, someone could come to me and say, "Hey, I have, indigestion." I'm like, "Oh, you need X, Y, and Z." And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't tell you how I knew that. I just knew it. So I started with the herbs. I started crafting like different teas, tinctures, things like that. Using the herbs to do candle work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and from there, it kind of blossomed. So people would come to me and say, "Oh, I'm going through, X, Y, and Z." And I'm like, "Well, in addition to the herbs, why don't you, do this, write this?" Um, Having them do some scripting, having them, what I came to realize is it's shadow work and inner work.
Mm-hmm.
And that has helped a lot of people. So I'm like, okay, I can kind of branch off and do that. And then I just started learning more and more. And like I said, the Reiki really opened me up to
Mm-hmm.
other modalities because once I started learning about the Reiki and becoming a Reiki master, and then, being in community with other Reiki masters, all the other modalities, learning about shadow work, learning
Mm-hmm.
about, all the other things that people can do with crystals and,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. So it kind of branched off from there into how can I use what I know now to help other people
Mm-hmm.
in the community that I want to help. And that's people who carry, and really it's everyone, because in my honest opinion, a lot of people carry traumatic energy within the body.
Yes.
So it's how can I help people release the traumatic energy that's stored within the body?
Mm-hmm.
And people don't really realize, a lot of people say, oh, well, that's just who I am. But is it? Or
Right.
are you reacting to a trigger that's been placed there since you were little and you don't realize it? It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of digging deeper and finding that. So
Mm-hmm.
that became kind of like my main focus. And then, realizing that, oh, but I have all these other skills. So, like I said, I am an accountant by day. Why not be holistic? WHOLE. Why
Mm-hmm.
not be holistic? Because your emotions, your physical wellness, your financial wellness, all of that really encompasses who you are. Because if one thing is off, so if your finances aren't running right, then your emotions aren't going to be great. Then your physical wellness, you have stress headaches and all that. It
Right.
all coincides into one. It's one thing, and you have to be balanced. So using, when I felt like accounting isn't for me, I mean, it's not. I'm good at it,
Right.
but I didn't learn that to be an accountant. I didn't learn and go through, the CPA certification, all that to be an accountant. I went through it so that I can use it in my holistic practice. At least that's my belief. So that's kind of how I'm transforming magical moments now, is to cater to the person as a whole, not just, the physical or the emotional. It's everything. It's their spiritual, it's their financial, it's everything.
And I think that's beautiful because you've merged them. Um, and you're even though you're good at it's not your favorite thing doing the accounting,
Right.
but you're good at it and you are utilizing the holistic part of being a holistic practitioner into that and segueing it into other things. I think that that's a beautiful thing and it can open up other doors.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. It can open up a lot of opportunity. Um, and I like how you said that, like, yeah, if your finances aren't right, what's going over here?
Yeah.
And what's going on over here? And when you start to think in that way, it opens up, I believe, or in my personal experience, I feel like it opens you up to looking at yourself as a whole,
Yes.
because everything that we do is based on something we've learned.
Exactly.
And there are things that we need to unlearn and practices that we need to unlearn that were routine, right? But it's kind of like you keep going down that street and there's that pothole and you know it's there, right? But you
Yeah.
keep trying to go over it slower and slower without doing any damage. When are you going to find the street that doesn't have a pothole?
Exactly. Or get the tools to fill the pothole in.
Thank you. That too.
Exactly.
Yeah, changing your direction, changing your thought process. Um, Again, that reinforcement, that word keeps coming up, it being reinforced, and then you have to change it. So, what do you feel, Karla, is something that a lot of clients come to you for? Is something in particular that you see a lot of demand for in your practice?
A lot of my clients start out wanting readings.
Okay.
And while I do readings, it's not, I don't really feel like it fulfills my purpose as
Mm-hmm.
much as some of the other healing things.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do realize that once we get into the readings and, we dive a little bit deeper, they do see the value in the healing work
Yeah.
because, Most people want to know about love. When am I gonna find my man? Most people want to know about their money. When's
Right.
money coming in? Okay, I can, see that. I can read the cards. I can tell you what spirit is telling me, what your guides are telling me. But a lot of the blockages that you are facing are either self-imposed or it's
Mhm.
because of some sort of traumatic energy in the body that you need to let go of.
Mm.
You're worried about finding your man or your woman or whoever you're with, but
Mhm.
um have you let go of the last one?
Yeah.
Have you let go of the trauma that the last one caused you?
Mm.
And
Ooh,
a
that's
lot of
deep.
right? A lot of people
Right.
like to think that trauma is this huge thing, like we had to have this big blowout, but really there's big trauma and there's little trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you experiencing that's, causing that delay?
Mm. And people don't like to hear that.
They don't. They don't.
They don't like to hear that. People want to build empires. Um, I've heard that language a lot. And you feel like if you do this and you hustle and you do this and you do that, but you're still getting a blockage. Have you come back to you?
Exactly.
Have you
Come
come
back
back
to
to you?
yourself.
Mm-hmm. Because everything starts with us. And I love how you say people think trauma is this big, big thing. No, but there's little traumas.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear something and it'll take you back
Mm-hmm.
to your childhood, or you will smell something and it will take you back to an experience you had in your childhood. Those things are powerful.
So powerful and so triggering. And a lot of them are very subconscious. And when
Mm-hmm.
something is so deeply ingrained that you don't even realize it, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how can you heal something that you don't realize is there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is, whew, it can get exhausting now.
Oh, yeah.
Healing is not linear. And it is, and this is all transparency, I'll deal with something. And then, a few months later, something else will come up and it might show up in a different way because there's a layer,
Yeah.
right? And I'll look back and I'll go, well, wait a minute, I thought I dealt with that.
Thought I healed that. Yeah.
And this is where it gets really tricky sometimes for some people, especially if you were reared in the church, because there's guilt and shame attached to a lot of doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there's this constant thing of you're not good enough, right? You've got to uh deal with that thing or pray that thing away or whatever. And when you sit under something like that, it's very easy to get critical of yourself. But remembering, and I think this is the biggest thing that I've had to remind myself, listen, God ain't seeing you like that.
Right. Right.
God is not, the vision of God and towards you is unconditional. It is loving. That is why you are here, right? These are things that are being shown to you to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So you can come into the fullness, the wholeness of you, right? So that your purpose can begin to really unfold,
Exactly.
you know? So healing can get exhausting.
It can. It can.
It can, but it's worth it. It's worth it. And do you feel like sometimes people have to take breaks occasionally?
Yes, I
Hmm.
do. And I advocate for self-care and taking breaks. And
Hmm.
I tell people healing is not just in the inner work, although it's a very important part.
Hmm.
Healing is also in the joy.
Yeah.
Go out and live your life
Yeah.
because life is a journey and you're not going to heal everything all at once. If you think about it, depending on how old you are. So I'll be 40 soon.
Hmm.
I've had, traumatic experiences since I was younger, let's say 25, 26 years. I
Hmm.
cannot unlearn and fix all of that overnight. If it took
Hmm.
me 25, 26 years for it to happen and for it to build, it's going to take me probably just as long to unlearn it, fix it, release the triggers, release the energy. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to rush the process, but at the same time, I don't want to be all about, healing, 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 and not living my life. There's so
Right.
much life to live. There's healing in the joy.
I
And
love how
that's
you
kind of
say that.
why I wanted, magical moments to also kind of be like a luxurious kind of healing space. I know it seems weird, but it's like, yes, we can have luxury and comfort while we're healing. So while you're doing your energetic practices, while you're doing your shadow work, and I don't really drink and I don't offer alcoholic beverages, but I do mocktails. So have a mocktail,
Mm-hmm.
which usually has some sort of herb that helps you open up your mind anyway. So
Right.
have a mocktail, have a charcuterie board while we sit and do some mirror work and do a face mask while I give you your Reiki. It's all about finding the time to come back to self, but in a very comfortable, graceful way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's loving yourself through it.
Yes,
And it also, because I think you could get so focused on healing that you're not in the moment, you're not living. Um,
absolutely.
I experienced that, and you literally, I had to sit back and go, wait a minute, you're missing all of this stuff. You're missing all of these things, and you have to be patient with it. And I love how you said, you'll be 40 soon, and you've had all this stuff that happened since you were young. It takes time for all of that to
Yeah,
heal. It takes time. It's not going to be this one and done transformative overnight thing. It takes time, work, and it also takes you being in the moment, living and loving yourself through it.
absolutely. And I think in this day and age, a lot of people want that instant gratification.
They do.
They want, they're like, well, I did the journaling 2 days ago. Okay, but you've been dealing with this for like 5 years. So let's take it one step at a time. It's
Right.
kind of like we want that instant gratification to the work that we do, without realizing that that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Because there's, like you said, there's layers. You
Mm-hmm.
may have hit on one thing and then in the middle of that realize, oh, but this stems from something else. And now you have to kind of pivot and heal
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
peeling back those layers. And that just, it takes time.
It does. It really, really takes time. And there's something else that came to mind too, is sitting in spaces that are triggering.
Yeah.
Um, exposure therapy. I was trying to think of what it's called. And being in a situation where, okay, how are you going to handle this in the midst of it? Are you and giving yourself enough grace in that? It could be very, very, very intense, dealing with that as well. So, Karla, what is on the horizon for you that you want to share?
Whew, what's on the horizon for me? I'm really just letting spirit guide me at this point. So I've
Mm-hmm.
had some changes that I needed to make within my working space. Um, but it was for the better, I think, so right now I'm just pivoting, trying to find a space where I can bring people together,
Mm-hmm.
trying to find, that brick and mortar where I can really hold events, because I do a lot of healing events, not just sound baths and things like that, but for instance, for my birthday, I always give back.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of people, giving me, and maybe this is something I need to heal, I don't know, but we'll figure that out later. Instead of people giving me gifts, I always do something and then donate to a cause.
Mm-hmm.
So my last birthday, we did what's called a chakra glow event where people
Mm-hmm.
came, we had food, we did all of the activities were geared towards healing, but everyone was having fun. Like it was a party. We had a glow temple. We had glow in the dark body paint. Like it was
Mm,
just, it was a time. We had dancers, people hula hooping. It was a time.
that's beautiful.
So I do things like that where people are having fun and don't really realize that they're healing,
Mm-hmm.
tapping into that inner child or whatever it is. So I really want a brick and mortar space where I can do more of that, and really more healing work along with the sound baths and the sound bowls. But also going to more businesses like the hospitals and the nursing homes,
Mm,
especially people who are dealing with cancer or they're on hospice and having a hard time, and just bringing holistic care to them during
yes,
that time.
that is beautiful. I think it's wonderful, and I think you will have your space.
Thank you. I
You
am manifesting it with all my heart.
yes, you will have your space, and it will be something beyond what you even envisioned, I believe. I'm totally about manifesting. Um, so that is really, really wonderful. I have enjoyed our conversation today. It's amazing. You and I have talked, but we haven't talked in depth, and I learned so much about you in like the first 15 minutes. And I love it because spirit always does it. And I'm just every time it's like a different it's experience, and I'm like, wow, okay. That's why you didn't want me to write anything out. Um, I will ask you, Karla, and I always ask everybody this towards the end of when we're recording. What encouragement would you give to someone who has walked a journey like you and they are discovering their healing and their purpose and what they're supposed to do?
To just keep going.
Hmm.
A lot of times on this healing journey, on any journey really, there comes a point where we feel like we're putting in so much, but we're not receiving as much as we put in, and we
Hmm.
feel like giving up. It doesn't matter if you're, starting a business, if you're healing, whatever you're doing, there always comes a point where it's like you feel like you've hit a roadblock and you want to give up. Do not give up. Just keep going, because a lot of times that roadblock isn't really a roadblock. It's a delay, it's a stillness, it's a time for you to sit and reassess, what you're doing, how you're feeling, how you're coming along. Am I doing what's aligned for me? Or are there changes that I need to make?
Yes,
So keep going, take the stillness, take the rest, and give yourself grace.
I love that. That is beautiful. Keep going. I love that. Well, Karla, I am very thankful to you for your willingness to come on the show today. It's been enlightening, encouraging, and just amazing. I'm very thankful that you came on today.
Thank you for having me. I was totally drawn to your light, and I'm just so grateful to have people in my life, whether they're here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I love when people come into my life that brings with them something that I can, give to the community and share with the community. And I definitely feel like you are one of those people. And I will share all that you have to give
Well,
with
thank
everyone
you.
that needs it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. And I will say this to you guys. I am going to put how you can find Karla in this episode, from her website to her social media to her YouTube. She does some beautiful meditations. There's lots of gifts and offerings that she has that I really think that anyone who listens to this would benefit from. So, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Couch Sessions. And do not forget, your life has purpose. You are on this planet for a reason. People need to know that you are here, and people need to hear from you. Thank you so much, guys, and we will see you soon.